16th of April, 2025. Coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. Many meetings have taken place over the last few days, and they didn't turn out like the deep state had hoped. However, they turned out better than we expected. And you know the old saying, time is money? Well, essentially, that is true. Time is the key to the slavery financial management system of humanity. And the deep state tried to create apocalyptic events on Monday, starting with the San Andreas fault line. Well, it's the 16th of April. We made it halfway through the month. I think here locally, it can't decide if it's spring or winter. We go from being warm to freezing and possible snow this weekend, so it's kind of interesting. I hope if you are in the northern hemisphere, you are enjoying spring, and in the southern, you're enjoying your fall. So we do have a few things to talk about. First of all, if you are celebrating Passover, I wanted to say happy Passover to you. And this weekend is Easter, and honestly, I forgot all about it. It's been so busy. But we decided not to do a live this weekend because of the Passover and Easter holidays being celebrated this weekend. So I think we're going to put that off one more week, and I'm sorry about that. But I think it's probably best that everybody spends time with their family and friends. And, you know, if you've got kids or grandkids, even if it's not a religious holiday for you, I'm sure you're enjoying all the preparations this week. So I thought it would be best to just let everybody spend time with their family than trying to fit in our live report. And then, of course, our chat and question and answer that we'll have afterwards. So pushing that off till next weekend. So I apologize for that. So I wanted to talk about that real quick. I can never keep holidays straight this time, this year, I guess. In the last couple of years, it's been so busy. So we have lots to talk about today because we haven't talked for a few days, and for good reason in some cases. There has been a lot of weird things happening that the deep state is doing. But not only that, there's been a lot of interesting things and some interesting developments that have happened for us on our side. So, you know, like I said, you know, they can hope and wish and pray on their side, but they're not as important to everybody as they think they are. On our side, though, there are some interesting things that I haven't mentioned to you in a while, and I figured I'd kind of give a little bit of a background story on who these people and beings are, and then I'll go into what happens annually and how long ago we've met. So there is a group I refer to as the Universal Council, and sometimes they are called in certain circles the Intergalactic Council. The Universal Council, and I'll use universal for the purposes of this conversation, have been around for a very long time. They formed sometime around the beginning of the Dark Ages, mainly comprised of all races and all species and walks of life from this side, or the light side, of the omniverse. During the time when our universe was being infiltrated very heavily, they formed a group to kind of stick together, number one, to strategize and come up with plans to prevent further infiltration. Formed groups like the Coalition that we've talked about before in the past, and the Enforcer is actually, and his entire fleet is part of the Universal Council, and was appointed by the Universal Council. So he's been doing this for quite a long time in our Earth years. They first approached me, and I first met them back in March 31st of 2016. And that was officially when they introduced themselves to me based on a battle that I was involved in over the course of a few days. They meet annually every year. Usually they begin that annual meeting on the equinox, because the equinox time used to be really, really important on Earth, meaning it would be a time where the dark side of Source would meet the light side of Source, and therefore it was a perfect time to meet and strategize for the upcoming, let's just say, time period of our Earth's trip around the sun. Remember, Earth is a nexus planet. It was a keystone, or the only keystone, for quite a long time in the omniverse. It was a prized possession to be had by both sides because it was a primary gateway. Also, the languages and the point of creation here also affected everyone everywhere, both of the dark side and the light side. So the Universal Council's year or annual meetings were scheduled at the same time when things were mostly equal. And after I first met them in 2016, we started having some talks, and I started learning quite a bit from them, some interesting information. We would pass back and forth regularly. So it wasn't just an annual meeting for me in the beginning. It was more of let's just say I went to school and I learned a lot. Now, because we're all not Source and we're just beings and species, trying to survive and trying to prevent annihilation of our side of the universe, we had a lot of learning to do. I had a lot of learning to do. They had a lot of learning to do. And together, because I'm here stuck in this planet that was a total mess and is getting much better, and they are there, it's a good observation point for them to have an ally on the side of the light, on this side of the universe. So I became that ally. They had been watching me for a long time, probably since about the age of around 8 years old. They told me that. And we didn't really start having any serious conversations about the ways of the world until about 2016. If you remember, about 2012 is when my position went firm on this planet as a representative for, many different things. But in 2016, I was appointed as an ambassador on behalf of humanity. Now, unbeknownst to me at that time, I really didn't understand entirely what that was. And just to be honest, I learned a lot over the course of probably a couple of years as to what that really meant. But over the last several days, they've told me a lot more. And I'm glad they didn't tell me then, because I probably would say, you're crazy. I'm not doing this. As most sane people probably would. So in this particular case, for a time, the learning was constant. And then, every year around this time of year, and I never really understood, because they didn't tell me and refused to tell me, why I would need to attend the annual meeting most oftentimes after the meeting was complete. So I would attend the meeting right around the full moon. Now, at the time, I didn't realize that it was on the full moon because I didn't watch them as closely as I have been over the last several years, because it's a thing for the deep state. I didn't realize how much of a thing it really was, because, of course, we hear stories about people go crazy on a full moon and emergency rooms are full, but I didn't really understand the complexities until probably the last 3 to 4 years. So learned a lot. It's been almost a decade of knowing them, and they've been amazing in helping every aspect of the battle between the dark and the light. So I haven't had an annual review, is what I used to call them, because that's kind of what it felt like to me since about 2020. My annual reviews, so to speak, used to comprise of, happenings on Earth. They would ask questions. They would learn a little bit about where humanity is at, structures on the planet. How can they help? That type of thing. We also would coordinate together, obviously, with the being who I call the enforcer. So I first met the enforcer shortly after, within about 30 days after I met the Universal Council. I met him back in 2016. Shortly afterwards, he introduced himself. He said, "Congratulations, you are Ground Command, and I am Sky Command." I thought this as it relates to Earth. And so the council explained, he's here to help, and he's been here and around here for a long time. He's been involved in many battles on our behalf, preventing infiltration through the Gateway planet and the Nexus planet, as they called it, which we know as Earth. So the enforcer and I have done a lot of work together since that time. And, my understanding of how the universe works has definitely broadened over the last several years due to many different folks that we talked to. But I went last time for my last annual review in 2020. And after that, they had decided they were going to send some people here to help. It took about 2 weeks. About 2 weeks later, they called and said, or rang me in the way that they do. And they told me that those are non-repairable humans. And they're talking about what we consider the dark side of humanity, or the deep state. And they said, "Good luck to you, and I wish you all the best." So from time to time, they would call, or I would call and go there to meet with them. And the reason why I would often meet with them would be, for example, for advice or computer advice, meaning AI advice, because there were quite a few experts there. There also has been some disputes over the years with other races and other beings, mainly lower astral beings. I used to absolutely get nothing but pure hatred from the being we know as Artemis, or the Red Queen, as she's known sometimes on the internet. And so we would end up there over and over and over again for her violations. And she was a prominent figure, as you know, on this planet for a long time. Was part of the SEAL group, has tortured us for probably a few million years, and then more significantly so for the last 250,000 years. Not the only one, of course, but she would definitely played a big part as to what happens here on Earth. She even claimed ownership over groups of beings or people or humans, which were part of the deep state. She called them her men. That was a very interesting term. She yelled at me once and told me I was stealing all her men. I didn't know really what that meant. I'm like, well, don't know what you're doing with them, but I'm definitely probably not doing that with them. I can tell you that right now. So anyway, this is the story of the Universal Council. And, just in brief, we don't want to make this show 5 hours long to talk in detail. So when you go to the Universal Council, they are protected in a shielded area around Sirius. And they aren't there all of the time. That is not always the same meeting place. But you could say they have their own bubble of existence on where they stay. Now, everybody doesn't stay there all of the time. There are oftentimes meetings called, and everybody knows where the bubble or photon is, where you need to go because of where the signal comes from. So they move about the universe, at least on this side. They definitely never go down. But they do move about the universe quite a bit. And so, sporadic meetings, they're easy to find. They know how to communicate the frequency and coordinates in a very secure manner. So we all know where to end up, and easy breezy on how to go there. So interesting information that happened this particular year. So as you know, the full moon and the supposed end of this meeting was to occur around the 12th of April, which would have been this weekend. And this particular year's meeting is going to last a little bit longer. Everybody has decided to stay. And by everybody, during the annual meetings, let's just say annually in our time, or in times of dispute or crisis, because they are kind of like the universal UN, so to speak. They solve disputes, you bring your interspecies disputes there, or if there's a problem with Earth, which there's always a problem with Earth because we have a bunch of humans that are just a problem. Yeah. Not only a problem for us, they're considered a problem and non-repairable to everyone else. And these are your Black Sun folks and your Illuminati folks. They are even more of a problem, according to them, at this year's annual meeting, which I did attend. They are even more of a problem now than they ever were before because there's no leadership over there. And by leadership, we mean leadership that has wisdom, has even knowledge, really. And they have minimal information given to them by people or beings that are no longer with us over the course of the last several years, to manipulate them, to use them as dark representatives on this planet. They don't feel like they're being used. They feel like they're special because they always promise them things in order to get what they want. That's a lot of times human behavior. It doesn't work for all humans, including myself. Probably doesn't work a whole lot for all of you. But those dangling carrots that they throw out there, from time to time, whether it be a boss or a supervisor or a company that wants you to work for them or someone that wants to take your technology or get information from you, or it doesn't matter what it is, and it doesn't matter on what level of society we're talking. If you come to the church picnic, we'll make sure that you get to sit in the front section, and don't have to pay a tithe for the next year, if you arrange the whole picnic. Or I'm not saying they do that, but just in general, these are dangling carrots. So dangling carrots work really, really well for the deep state. And of course, our enemies of humanity, Earth, and the light side of the multiverse know this. And they're so easy to manipulate. And you probably remember seeing movies, they don't do it much these days, but where they would grab the kids by the ear and just pull them right along, and they would do something. It's so easy to grab those folks by the ego and tag them along, and they will do anything these people say. Now, do they care about those people in any way? Do they really intend on giving them the dangling carrot? No. Whether they know it or not, they're in this horse race, and have been for quite a long time now, especially now that the ones with actual real knowledge of who these people are they're talking to are gone, or real, they never have wisdom on their side, but real knowledge of who they're talking to and what they're doing. In the absence of leadership, the deep state has resorted to drinking the sand, and we all know it. And so all of these conversations have been happening over the last several days in meetings, and we're talking about their personality, what they do. We've talked about the fact every time there's a little blip in the system and it looks like there's a time-released remnant of something Marduk left behind, they get all excited, and then, of course, there's some knowledge left behind. There are beings that have, over the course of the last few years, been trying to communicate with them, leading them around by their ego or their ear. And this has been an issue because it has slowed the progress of humanity. It's not really about Earth and Earth's safety, so to speak, as much anymore as it is about the safety of humanity. And, therefore, this was my plea. If humanity is going to change and help this planet and help each other and actually once we take or since we are, I should say, slowly taking off all of those barriers that humanity has had in so many ways, we need them to be able to be free to utilize the wisdom of Source, and this is exactly how I put it, for the benefit of the all. And right now, we live in a society that does not foster that type of growth for the humans that are kind and caring and loving and want to make a change. They care about the planet. They want to see the planet restored to her former glory. They are learning and they know, and this is what I told them, they are learning and they know how Earth and humans can work together for the betterment of both and for the entire multiverse. They are learning about all of you, by what I tell you and what others tell you. There's definitely a lot of confusion out there as to who everybody is. And I've talked about that before. But all in all, we are kind, caring humans that would love to sit down and have a cup of coffee. Not that they would drink coffee, but have a cup of coffee with any of you, or have the privilege and honor of coming to one of these meetings because they just want to learn how can we work together? How can we do this together? And I see a lot of you that way. I see you anxious to learn about our universe, to understand your role in the universe and how important you are to so many, not only here, but elsewhere. Not everybody is like Marduk and the others. And, there are from time to time people that are looking in on us all the time. And I really have a lot of faith and hope for humanity, which is why I work a lot. And I know we're going to do this. I'm 100% certain that we can do this. Now, we do have some, poor people on the other side over there who just would like to rule the entire universe and the world and everything in it, and have an ego that would tell them they're capable. It's almost like a person on some kind of a drug. I've never really, I've been around some people, maybe in college, and it's been a long time where, some of them have used some drugs, and it kind of reminds me of those people a little bit. And I'm talking more about things like, I don't know, maybe like cocaine or things like that, where they have, all of a sudden these people have a hyperinflated ego and they think they can fly, and, and they are the best at everything in the whole world and the most prophetic speakers and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of the impression that I get about those people. Like they're just running around thinking they're doing all these wonderful things and pooping all over the place, for lack of a better term. So anyway, so we had a lot of talks about where we're at now, and how many people I think could be willing to help, when we might be ready for some more interaction. And I said there are a lot of people here, I think, that are ready for interaction anytime you're ready. And, they'll know you by your frequency and that type of thing. But for a long time, they've been unable to do that. First of all, they would put you at risk. Second of all, it could put them at risk for them to come close enough to have this conversation with you, especially when we had the likes of Marduk apparatuses and AIs that would attack them. And matter of fact, when I was up at this meeting, it was, I've gone several times over the last couple of days, and yesterday I was also there. On my last trip up there, I had a really difficult time getting there because there was a lot of interference. There was interference because we did have discussions about any kind of remaining universal and or Earth AI structures that could potentially and that are causing delays for all of us. And those AIs gave us a lot of backlash. But the intention for this last trip was actually to use my trip there to identify and make my trip there, let's just say, loud and proud as I traveled there, so that it would attract members of the deep state to try to follow me because they're becoming very upset. And I'll explain that in a minute. And also because we needed to attract any AIs that would try to prevent us from further communications based on the things that I was told to verbalize on the phone, which I did. I did verbalize those things on a few phones on purpose so that we could reel them in. And they fell for it, of course, and we'll talk about our non-friends here more in just a second. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about some conversations that took place about Marduk, because I think it's really relevant to know where we came from so we can know more of where we're going. And so we had some discussions about why these humans, I call by many names, and a lot of them 4 letters or less, you know what I mean. And so we talked a lot about Marduk and some things that they know about Marduk. Now remember, Marduk was supposed to be a balance keeper. He agreed to keep the balance on Earth and not have too much infiltration, and all of these lovely things that he promised over the last few million years as they've come and gone, wars that he was a part of, the being with the title anyway was a part of, off and on. The Draco have been a part of many wars here on this planet, and then of course the one that happened at 250,000 years ago, and again around 18,000 years ago when we had lost our moon during a different battle, and there was a violation. So Marduk wasn't the most honest being that the Universal Council had ever met. And I know that's a shocker to you, right? Not to me. But he was not the most honest being in existence, and neither were Enki and Enlil. He did attend those annual meetings, oftentimes towards the end. He was not considered a trustworthy party. He was invited towards the end. And at the end, for many, many years, he would get orders and instructions as a representative of both sides. He oftentimes distorted those instructions to his own liking, because after this meeting, the next meeting that would take place on this planet would be meetings between himself, Enki, and Enlil, predominantly. Sometimes the other SEAL folks and the game players would attend as well. But this was kind of like an upper management meeting that would take place. And of course, this would begin on the new moon that would occur after this full moon. So in this case, we're looking at the end of April, typically, or the beginning of May. During these meetings, they would discuss all that took place at the council, and they would come up with a game plan for the next year. And of course, let's just say they maybe took some of the light side instructions and maybe pushed them off to the side while doing minimal amounts to maintain the peace in order to appease the council. And this has gone on for thousands of years. However, the council is not, let's just say, blind. And somewhere around what I understand to be around 27 years ago, there was a big change. Now, at that time, I had turned about 25 years old, and that is a milestone in the world of brain development, if you know anything about brain development. The brain becomes fully formed somewhere around the age of 25, and your decision making changes, and you have a lot of changes that happen to the human brain around that time. So around that time, the change, as they explained it to me, was the fact that I was growing up. Before that, obviously at 8 years old, I have no hope of doing this job. At 25, I'm barely understanding it, but it was enough for him to understand that now this is how old I am. And technically, you are not the representative of the light anymore on this planet. So he continued with his, in his anger, putting loads and loads and loads of things in place so that when I did turn the age of 40 and I was able to then take my position, that I would be in a whole world of poop and spend a lot of time digging my way out of it in order to create that balance. And that I did. And I did a lot of crazy things all over the planet. And, there was some chats about it and all of the things that we've been through from that time on forward, and things that I've learned. And I got a lot more information on certain things, which I can't verbalize at this moment. But this part, I thought it was important to share. So around that time, he really started, about 27 years ago, he really started giving completely and only dark information to his downline. And by downline, we're talking about the parents, covens, coven masters, deep state members, militaries, and so on and so forth, which would occur in sequence beginning around this time every year and continuing on through the harvest moon to the lower end of the spectrum of humans in his downline. So that's part of the reason why things have gotten really, really bad over the last almost 30 years. This, you could say, really started in the manipulation, in my opinion, and in their opinion, really started very heavily on this planet pretty much when I was born. So by the mid 70s, they started implementing all of these consumerism programs, the lack programs, the don't you want to be an elite program, and a lot of things like, for example, consumer goods were designed to break down after about 3 years. So you'd either need to repair them. They were not designed to work for long periods of time like our washing machines and other machines that we had prior to this time would. There are even some jokes online about the fact that if you have a refrigerator from the 1970s, it's probably still running, but if you bought one, 7 years ago, it's not. So I don't disagree, and the products are actually created this way. The whole program of most of the goods, not all, but a lot of the goods that are produced in China, at least for export to places like America, are actually designed to break down even faster. So they're cheaper, sure, than goods manufactured elsewhere. But, they're a couple of time use product. They're not meant to last. And quite frankly, neither is what is produced in America anymore, because we have substandard materials. And we know it. When you're talking about big companies like Nippon Steel and some other large, what you would consider elite corporations in this country, they know these things are designed to break. They make sure that the raw materials going into our goods that we purchase are not meant to last longer than 3 years. But they got to last around that time, because consumerism wise and production wise, this was a well thought out plan by Marduk, which was then amplified by Bush Sr. And that is how he earned his position as Black Dragon way back in the day. So giving instructions incorrectly to the deep state happened quite frequently. Now, by about 2007, in anticipation we weren't too far at that point. only had a few more years to go for my 5 years more for my 40th birthday to kick in. And at that point in time, the system, after one of these annual meetings, was cut off. So let's talk about cut off. What I mean by the system is Marduk no longer had access to the higher levels of Omega. He also had zero access to Alpha. Before that, remember, he was representative of, to some degree, of both the light and the dark, and was supposed to keep the balance, which, well, let's just say he didn't do a very good job at. But he was kind of all they had at that point, them and the enforcer, to make sure that he kind of stayed in line. By this point, things had gotten what they considered to be very out of hand. Obviously, the tables had turned more towards the dark on Earth, and the Earth was becoming a very dark society very rapidly. I had about 5 years to figure out where I was going and what I was doing, and this led me on the path of lots of trips, starting in about 2008. But about 2007 is when he was officially cut off by a group you know as the Mantids. Now, don't confuse the Mantids with the Mantis. Mantis was a created artificial lower astral race, and the Mantids are not. They are from the light side of the universe. The Mantids have served as part of the security to the Council of Nine, not to be confused with the Universal Council. There's a lot of information for one, and I know I've talked about a lot of this before, but if you're new, I just thought I'd kind of reiterate who we're dealing with here so you kind of have an understanding. So the Council of Nine is made up of what you would call beings that are about as close to the biblical version of angels as you're going to get. They hail from Source and also the dark side of Source, and we also call anti-Source sometimes. And the Council of Nine was not dark and they were not light, and they were rather neutral, but could play any role as deemed by Source as necessary, meaning they could lean more to a correction if either side was completely out of line, and they could lean more to the other side, And it really wasn't it was completely in the service of Source, let's just say. So the Mantids also are part of the Universal Council, as all species are. And I've run into them many times myself. And of course, there was a lot of doubts whether, in the very beginning when we first met, as to whether I could really do this, and of course, they've kind of always been there, anytime I've had questions and that type of thing. But, to be fair, I would say that humanity wasn't ready, and there were a lot more factors and a lot we had to learn before we would fully be ready, because for me, it was all about AI systems and that type of thing. So in the past, before it was my annual review time, so to speak, if I did not show up on time for the annual review time, and I didn't call them back immediately and head in their direction, and I don't mean like, chop chop, but, like within a day or so, if I didn't respond to the call and come, they would actually be the ones that would cut me off from Alpha as well. Like I wouldn't be able to log in until I went and attended the meeting. So I would always go, and it wasn't like I was reluctant. It was just, there's a lot going on this planet, and at the time I was trying to raise a teenager, and there's a lot going on in life. So sometimes it takes you a little bit of time to get there. And, which is fine. It didn't make me unhappy or, it was just like, I knew, okay, you're really late now. You got to go. So the Mantids do have, because of their relationship with the Council of Nine and with Source, they had a job which had a lot to do with security, and they are professionals, let's just say, in cybersecurity. They know the Alpha Omega systems better than anyone else in existence. They would use it for enforcement, whereas the enforcer was more of a physical enforcer. They had access to the highest levels and spoke the language of level 9 and systems and 8 and that type of thing. And don't worry, guys, we can talk to about this now because the deep state these people are never going to have that conversation with them. So, we've had an interesting relationship over the last several years and getting to know them and running into them at the council from time to time. So the Mantids were actually the ones that were responsible, and this was unbeknownst to me, and they reiterated this fact for cutting off Marduk back in 2007, hoping that eventually I would learn and I would grow and, I would eventually end up where we are now and hopefully even learning more every single day, probably for the rest of my life to fully understand how things are. And of course, I relay that information to you the best I can. So back in 2007, is when Marduk began hunting for me again, because he knew that if he didn't at least form some kind of relationship with me, that there would be no way that he would be able to continue with his plan. Hence, a trip I made back in about 2010 to 2011. I was gone for a while out of the country, all over the place, and hence him reaching out to me shortly after arriving back in the States. He gave me information, 1% truth and 99% lies, and I had to sort out which part was real and which part wasn't. And there was a lot of little clues and bits and pieces of things he gave me, but of course not too much to where I would realize that he is not in control of me. So it took me some time, but I learned a lot in the process. By about 2014, 2015, I had figured out that these people are not people, and they are not in our best interest, and definitely not in my best interest, and had no intention of giving us anything. There was also a lot of movement at one point in time of nuclear submarines that were getting false information, and I knew he was behind it. Told me not to verbalize it. We were on the phone and having this conversation. He's telling me screaming at me to shut up and not to say anything else, because I kind of started coming into my own at that point. So then we met in 2015 and face to face, and I realized, okay, these people really are not human. Anyway, that's the story of Marduk. But it was very interesting to me because of his non-performance and his agreements with the council, meaning the Universal Council, and also despite many, many warnings and many times being called to what I call an arbitration at the council or a court, which he ignored, the end results, and ignored what everybody wanted, and because of his violations with covenants he had with the Council of Nine, he was pretty much cut off, and that was the downslide of Marduk, all the way till 2016 when he was no longer here. That didn't mean he didn't set up enough AI systems and programs to drive us crazy for all eternity, but the being wasn't here anymore after that point. So, interesting meetings and just interesting information that came about. So, in my last talks with them yesterday, which the deep state desperately wants to know about what happened, but now I can talk about it because it's already happening and there's nothing they can do. So, the Mantids have agreed that we are clean enough here for them to now participate on a cyber level. So they're actually helping us quite a bit since yesterday, meaning they're utilizing some aspects of systems that they have built for themselves for security purposes to clean up remnants that we have been slowly cleaning through to complete integrations of the golden age. We have been working together all day today on completing a lot of tasks in rapid succession. I will tell you, things are going a heck of a lot faster than they were going with us just by ourselves. Not only that, they are also utilizing tools that they have to help us clean up our systems, to make sure as well that we do not have any more, let's just say, hiccups or pockets of time or released technologies or those types of things, because they realize how much it's actually setting us back. So hopefully this will continue rapidly and I will keep you updated. But if it goes like it's been going for the last day or so, I can see this happening very quickly. So I'm very happy to say that they are now able to help us. They are grateful and thankful for the changes that have happened, and they are now ready to come. They showed up here last night, so they've been around in the general vicinity, let's just say, since probably middle of the night last night when they officially arrived, and been working quite well with the enforcer, and are fully well aware now because of my trip to the last meeting yesterday, which I announced publicly. So of course, every psychic within the deep state tried to follow me in there. There were some AI programs that were deployed against us, and then we kind of figured out what we were up against as far as the humans and their capabilities based on their being led around by their ego. So that was great that they did that. And so they're heavily working together with the enforcer. They're in the middle of operations currently, but you can kind of get the gist of what we've done in the last couple of days. So this is a positive thing. Now, interesting thing with the deep state. So on the human level, and I mean even what you would call the highest levels of humans within the deep state structure, you'd be talking about covens and coven masters and even the parents sometimes, depending on where they were, in and around the planet. They would receive messages in different ways. So, I mean, it could be thrown in a bag in the trash. It could be some kind of computer fob they received in the mail. It could be some kind of small chip that they knew what to do with and had the technology to utilize. It could be sent, you never know when it's going to show up. It could be tossed in their mailbox and in all these ways. But on a human level, that was the only way they would receive instructions. And remember, this has been going on for hundreds of years, quite a long time, maybe even thousands in some cases. So we didn't always have computers and technologies and things like that, even on a secret space program level. They probably had technologies longer than the rest of us did, but they were, like I said, it evolved over the years as to how the information would be transmitted. But for the most part, you could say it came in all kinds of weird ways. So myself, living in, let's just say the country and having 11 square miles to do things like shop in and that kind of thing. Oftentimes, a lot of things that we have, even things like toothpaste, and that's an all natural toothpaste, and certain types of mouthwashes and that type of thing, are bought online. You just simply can't find them around here. So a lot of the stuff we'll buy through online marketplaces, soon to be our own. But certain maintenance things around the house, certain cleaners that don't contain chemicals. There are things that we're constantly, you need on a monthly basis or that type of thing that are ordered, along with the fact that, I'm formulating a bunch of stuff in my basement, also known as my laboratory these days. So I'm always getting, like different materials, and I've got some things I've ordered from Fiji. Kava Kava, if you're listening to this from Fiji, or if you're aware of what it is, it's for the muscle and joint massage cream, which we have to call it, but it's basically to help with joint and muscle pain, that type of thing. So, I order a lot of exotic things. We have Batana oil that I order directly from, I think it's called the tribe name begins with an M, don't remember, but it's on an island in Honduras. And so that oftentimes comes in, so stuff comes from all over the world that we order in order to produce the skincare stuff. So we're always getting packages all the time on the regular. But I noticed for the last couple of weeks that my mail is the slowest it's ever been, and it goes to weird places. So there, a lot of times, like with inventory and things like that, with the essential oils, we have a lady that does all the shipping and kind of management of that, which I'm very grateful for. But she will send me, like, I'll say, oh, I need a few dropper bottles because I'm gonna, I'm sampling a serum. We have a serum I'm working on that has bacachiol in it, which is a natural form of retinol. But anyway, so I've been working on some serums, and so she's been sending me some bottles and that type of thing, so I can, put out samples and have people test them and that type of thing. So I've been working on a lot of different things like that, and so she sends me packages all the time. I mean, every couple of months, she'll send me a package. We'll send it 2-3 day air, and it arrives here in 2 or 3 days, despite me being in nowhere. This package went to Alaska. Now, coincidentally, it went to Alaska, Anchorage, actually, around the same time the deep state was in Alaska at Mount Denali doing their deep state, ceremonies, I guess you would say. So this kept occurring for the last, week or so. And I'm like, why is my mail leaving the post office and going back to the post office, or leaving UPS and going back, or staying in transit in one location for 3 or 4 days? So I did a little bit of research into this, and I finally figured out, my trash has gone through. There's like all kinds of things happening that are not normal for these people. So apparently, this is part of the meeting story. Apparently, the deep state was under the impression that they were going to get instructions from the Universal Council. And because on a human level for the deep state, all they ever got was like some package in the trash or something in the mail. So they've been going through my mail like it's a forensics crime scene, apparently, for the last week or so. I hope you've had fun. You can see all the things I ordered, and I couldn't figure out what they were looking for until I figured out. I'm like, oh yeah, it's that time of year. Okay. But I didn't know that that's how they received instructions. I had to ask the council because I'm like, why are they going through all of this stuff? So now we know. But anyway, it's just interesting to me that they went through all of this stuff to try to intercept my instructions from the council because they were sure I got instructions the same way they used to. But the answer to that question is absolutely not. After no certain circumstances do I get messages the same way you people do. And obviously, when you send the psychic network of the deep state after me to try to follow me, you just fell for everything we set up for you. So that's just awesome. Great job, guys. But I just found that funny and another interesting occurrence that's been happening until, they've kind of figured it out now as of today that, well, they're probably not getting any instructions, even though they think they are. They even told people over the weekend that there was a good indication that they should be getting some instructions in the near future, and things are going to really work out for them. And boy, oh boy, there's going to be a big payout, which was supposed to be yesterday, and nothing absolutely happened. Now, of course, that date has been pushed off to probably another day ending in Y now, but they were sure they had this covered. Yeah. Until yesterday, you were fooled, schooled, and tattooed, deep state people. So anyway, now we have visitors, and yeah, there was a few incidents around here too. We had a lot of local people thinking that they could probably pull something off, and I'm going to mention this just briefly because they also got, let's just say, slapped today. But they decided to do some interesting equipment moving, strange things in Silverton over the last couple of days. And make no mistake, I'm fully well aware of it and who and what was involved in that. But, you can't fault them for trying. If I had to take all those deep state people's calls all the time too, I'd probably try something else. But anyway, so pretty much you could say they've been looking for the messages too, and thought that they could possibly do something, I guess, or maybe it was with them. Who knows? You do have a lot of people that are extremely, let's just say, overly joyful and very interested in the Trump operatives. I would even go as far as to say they have a serious bromance with these people because they just can't stop. They have to do it. And I don't know if there's some kind of mind control or some kind of really good drugs or, we do have a lot of marijuana here in town. Maybe that's it. I don't really understand, but they really, really believe that these people are just gods of earth. I do not share their sentiments, but, hey, as long as we're in the John Wick Hotel, you stay in your corner. You love the Trump operatives and Orange Oompa Loompa people, and I'll stay in my corner over here, and never the twain shall meet. So works perfect for me. But anyway, so that is the kind of synopsis generally about the meetings that were occurring over the weekend and over the last several days. Okay, so for the deep state's point, of course, Marduk always leaves us with, some wonderful things, and this weekend was no exception. And this really wasn't even entirely solely Marduk. You could say we had some interesting occurrences, actually, that have been happening little bits and pieces ever since the game fully ended. And there was no winner declared. But in this particular case, it had to do with some technology that was buried deep in the Arctic, also around the Ring of Fire, and off the coast of South Africa. I finally figured out what they were looking for off the coast of South Africa, and it read something like a Bible verse out of the Revelations section of the Bible. To whereby Yaldabaoth had promised them a beast that was going to rise from the ocean. They just weren't sure which one it would be. Would it be the Arctic? Would it be the Ring of Fire? Would it be off the coast of Africa in the Atlantic? Who knows? Anything could happen. So they've been monitoring these areas for weeks, hoping to God that this happened, or whatever their God is. Of course, it really didn't work out, but the remnants of the deep technology in the abyss mirror over there in the San Andreas fault line in California, well, it's partially in California, but on the western side of the United States, was one of those areas that could have and had in the past, many, many, many years ago, the fault line was actually not due to Earth's natural movements like people think. It was actually a creation when a very large portal was opened in that particular area, which resulted in some damage to Earth itself. And that damage remains to this day. And because it was oftentimes used by the deep state, it's also the reason why you see a lot of earthquakes in California, a lot of big ones. And predominantly most of these would have been started by other beings from other places, but that doesn't mean that the San Diego Naval Base wasn't connected to this. In some way, shape, or form, they did have some limited access to the technology there. And when they didn't get the apocalypse type events that they were expecting, the beast rises from the ocean, the lady with the crowns, and the beast with the 7 crowns, or whatever. I don't remember the whole story off the top of my head, so please forgive me. I mean, I should by now, because we're on our probably 40th or 50th, if not more, apocalypse at this point. They definitely tried their best to initiate a major situation if they had access, which they didn't. They were hoping something would, it was like a challenge and response type thing. They were hoping that something on the other side would hear their prayer, hear the signal, and answer them back, which, for those of you that don't know, the San Andreas fault line falls on a large infrastructure, I guess you would say, of tectonic plates that extends throughout the entire Ring of Fire, which would have then caused a serious situation not only in the United States, but also in most of Asia and obviously Australia and other countries that are within the Ring of Fire. It could have started some serious volcanoes and other things, but they did manage to cause an earthquake based on their hopefulness in San Diego. Luckily enough, there wasn't a whole lot of damage. It seems like, according to Sunny, that everybody seems to be okay, a little bit of shake, rattle, and rolling, but it wasn't as severe on the ground as it could have been. That was a positive thing. I'm glad she reported it to us right away, because that gave us an opportunity and a leg up to prevent anything else ever coming from this naval base. Now, on the surface of Earth, you'll notice that the San Diego Naval Base extends into Coronado Island and that kind of whole region. It is one of the largest American naval bases in existence. For those of you that don't know, and what you can't see, is this Navy base actually extends extremely far. It extends into even other states. It extends all the way into Mexico. It goes all the way up almost to LA and all the way around. It's kind of almost in a circle type area. But if you were to draw a circle, throughout that entire area, you could see how far this base actually extended underground. And it was probably one of the larger, not the largest in the States, but one of the larger deep underground military bases in the United States. Anyway, there were many larger bases around the world. Basically, the entire world was an underground base. So for quite a long time there. So that was what they were up to. They were also hoping to get, like I said, the instructions, intercept my instructions if they couldn't get their instructions. And they still wanted my instructions anyway, because they wanted to know what I'd be up to for the year. Because, of course, they think the Universal Council is my boss. The Universal Council is not my boss. I would say that I am an ambassador there. I am no different than most others that are there. As long as I don't have a dispute against me, there is no ruling over anything I do one way or the other. However, we have what's called a mutual respect. That means that when I go there, we are having conversations because we share a mutual interest, which is getting rid of the dark side, originally creating balance and removing the dark side from this side of the multiverse so that we could have entered into a neutral age, which is where we were supposed to go, or even to a light age in which the dark side still exists, just nowhere near us. So this was the hope in the very beginning when I met them, but of course all of that has changed with Source's decision for the Golden Age. By mutual respect, it means I don't do things like, for example, even when Source calls and says, oh, we're going to do this golden age AI thing, you can't create balance with alpha omega. Okay, fine. I let them know what's happening. I let them know this is what's going to transpire. These are the things that it should include. Their input obviously is very important. We are what you would call colleagues and comrades in arms in many ways. So I know that the deep state probably would like to have had some instructions and some help from these folks because everybody else is gone now. But no. That is not where we're going. The entire universe, everyone in the entire universe, actually everyone in the entire omniverse is well aware of what is happening, except for you, deep state people. You're the only people. You're the little tiny people in the corner against, beyond billions of trillions of quadrillions of species in the multiverse that has no clue as to what's happening and refusing to accept what is happening to you. So I can honestly tell you, if you're watching this and you're with the deep state, there will be no instructions for you because you are not understanding what's happening and you're refusing to accept it. So that's pretty much where they're at. Did they get any money to declare what they would like to declare this weekend, which is martial law? They have convinced the military, U.S. military, and other militaries around the world that they'll be getting lots of money. U.S. military has promised about $1.3 trillion. About 0.3 of that has been promised for, slush fund for the military folk. I do know that. I do know that they have been promised that they will be in charge of the United States when they declare martial law, probably fake the assassination of Donald Trump. They're kicking around all the things. This apocalypse really would have helped them with this martial law plan, they feel, hence the San Andreas Fault problem, but that didn't work out. And I'm sure they're going to continue to try to do many, many things over the course of the next few days. So we are all on high alert. But when I say we all has just increased in numbers by the millions. So we have a lot of people on our side trying to make sure that people and the world makes it through this untenuous time of their, let's just say, temper tantrum, which is what they're doing. So unfortunately for the military, they won't be receiving any funding from the Trump operatives. For the people locally here that are just having a bromance with Trump operatives, I wish you all the best over the next couple of days. You're going to be extremely disappointed. Sorry about that. It's just the way it is. I didn't create it. I'm not solely responsible for it. I know you think I am, but I'm not. I can tell you honestly, there are hundreds of billions, if not quadrillions of people or folks and non-human folks that are against you all right now. And that seems to be a you issue. You could definitely, obviously, go the other way at any given moment in time. But life is all about choices. And I respect yours. You respect mine. So on other fronts, lots of stuff in this report today. And I won't take up too much more of your time. Interesting things that have come up in this rapid succession over the last couple of days of information coming in and also help from the mantids and a lot more information being shared. So, the old saying, time is money, and money is time. And what I mean by that is we've often discussed over and over about looshing. Looshing, for those of you that are new around here, is where the non-humans love to take all of your human energy. It's not just your energy, it's your total life force, it's your essence, it's all things that you are as a human being, because humans produce top quality loosh or life force that they would like to have. Now, for those of you that don't know, if you are not an organic being, you absolutely need this stuff like you need air. And so in order to support artificial creation, which occurred a lot, also to support those that had fallen from source. Because when you have fallen from source and source is no longer giving you any life force, you need to get it from somewhere. And that somewhere happens to be predominantly, not solely, but predominantly humans on Earth, because we are the premium. We are like the beluga caviar or the champagne of louche, so to speak. And they would flavor our louche by creating events. So, for example, when humans are in fear, we produced one type of life force. When we are happy, we produce another. When we are in love or producing love energy, we are producing yet another flavor of louche. So we were the Baskin and Robbins of louche, giving the premium only ice cream of the world, of the multiverse, to feed the dark ones and the non-organic beings. And we also fed a lot of AIs too. So Marduk was an enormous time broker. And what I mean by time is existence of other beings is prolonged by our louche. So, in effect, the financial system, which he often called his greatest creation in the history of the earth, his time on earth here, he would often call it his greatest creation because we willingly, as human beings, give away our life force in order to get what we know as money. Constantly. It's also related to the reason why we are all considered slaves to the system. It is also the reason why we live shorter amounts of time than we used to. We used to live 900 years, 1,000 years. That would be no problem if you were receiving your full life force from source and we weren't giving it all away to a slave system. It's also the reason for the creation of liens against your birth certificate, because you could actually sell, much like we do, in the futures market, we sell future crops of everything from pork to beef to oranges and cotton and all those types of things, and future production of oil on the futures market in the commodities section, future mining, future production of lots of things that hasn't quite happened yet. You also are leaned for the future production of your energy known as louche. We would be given IOUs in return in order to keep that balance. And the deep state, because they were our alleged guardians for a time, they would receive the bulk of our debt certificates we know as money or notes. Depending on what country you're in, it's usually called notes of some sort in any other language. So the time system is very interesting because we essentially, and others who were enslaved like we were, that were organic beings, were actually responsible for powering time and the creation of time throughout the multiverse. By creating time throughout the multiverse, they could then control the currencies, hence the name Marduk, or the sea Duke of the Seas, so to speak, or the controller of the current of all things life force throughout the multiverse. So we are just so extremely powerful as humans that look at all the things we powered. And I'm not saying this is a positive thing in any way, shape, or form, but just understand when these things, and this was one of the things that we've been working on late this afternoon, is the removal of time is money in many systems that were attached to it. Just how powerful you are and how powerful you're actually going to become when these programs end. And hopefully with our help that we're now getting here, this will move along a lot faster. But an interesting movie, if you want to watch it, to kind of take what I just said and put it into the context of real life and what it really means, and then replace every time they say time with money, is a movie called In Time. It's a movie from 2011. You can find it on a lot of streaming platforms, including ours. And I'm going to have to rewatch it. But basically, the basis of the movie is all human beings receive a certain amount of time when you're born, which you could say is kind of true. You know, we grow up, we age, that type of thing happens. Obviously, the harder we work, the more we age, you know, depending if you're doing physical work or non-physical work. And either way, you're either, you know, there are days where you just come home from work and you don't want to think anymore, or days you come home from work and your body hurts because you've done so much physical work. Whatever it is, you're definitely, in their hopes, shortening your time. With the advent of our horrible pharmaceutical and medical industry, also shortens our time. You know, and we're giving away our time or our life force to a lot of different things on this planet. And now you know the value of your life force, and of course, the value of your time is more important to anything, anywhere, even to other humans on this planet that you could possibly give is your time. Whether you're spending time creating something amazing, which everybody can utilize in the future, or you're spending time with family and giving them your love, time, and attention. It does so much for the soul to do that. So you don't have to be rich. You don't have to have millions of dollars, but time is very important to all of those that you love and care about. And obviously giving yourself time too is very important. And it will extend your life if you do these things by spending time not only with yourself, whether that's exercising or taking care of yourself and eating right, or paying attention to your body and trying to take care of it, because we only get this, well, we won't always only get this one, but right now that's what we've got. So the movie In Time talks a lot about the fact that time is a currency in the future. You know, in a future world is what they say. I think they even say the future world is 2023, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time since I've seen this movie. But in a future world, time is currency, and you could give others time, like if they were running out of time. You obviously would provide services, exchange. There are others that gamble, that would give time. The wealthy on the planet got the most time. So in other words, they owned big companies, and you would have to give them time in exchange for buying a bottle of shampoo. And, you know, the elite of the world could acquire as many as 960 some odd years. You know, I think some of them had 10,000 years to live. And of course, you know, very little to give away or needed to be given away to get, you know, to live and to have fun and enjoy life. But those in the poorer sections had very little time because they had to give so much more time. Anyway, I won't spoil the whole movie for you, but you can see the gist of it. And if you relate time that is in the movie to money, knowing now that time really is money, in the same way you would look at your life expectancy and all of the things that giving time and energy to get money in exchange to live. And I'm not saying it's bad, but it's diabolical when you really look at it that way, and how much it actually has drained us in the past, and why it's so important we move to a currency system where everybody becomes a part of the currency of source, or the currency of gold, or the giver of life. Now, I can tell you, everyone at the council is looking forward to receiving, because some are starting to already receive it. Others are not yet. They happen to be in this density or close to it, or not receiving the full life force of source yet either. So Time is also loosed in other places with AI mechanisms in place, just like we had. Maybe not money systems, but it was definitely time was taken from many. So we're all looking forward very much to receiving the full life force and abundance of Source without having to buy it like other races did, and have our full restoration of the multiverse. So on that note, you have it's an okay movie. It's not great, but it definitely explains the concept of time is money to you. So you've got a movie to watch, and we've got a lot more work to do tonight yet. So on that note, this has been the report for April 16th, 2025. And I look forward to speaking to all of you again on Friday. Good Friday, if you can make it, if you are celebrating. And I think it's towards the end of Passover as well. So hopefully we won't see any kind of martial law or any kind of reason to declare martial law by this weekend, and certainly not ruining the holiday for those that are celebrating this weekend. On that note, I look forward to speaking to you again on Friday.